Then I'm gonna go to the CSS layout, the position properties. So yeah, I'm gonna delete these now. Also the styles, except not for the body. I'm gonna keep the margin bottom. Alright. So the position property. I'm gonna remove these. There we go. So yeah, the position property specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. There's 5 different values. It can be static, relative, fixed, absolute, or sticky. And we're gonna go through these. So yeah, when we use the position property, elements are going to be positioned using the top, bottom, left, and right properties. However, they will not work unless the position property is set first. And they work differently depending on the position value. I'm gonna give you some examples. So, the default value for the position property is static. I'm gonna create a div element with the class of example. And let's say that the default value is position static. Alright, so if I take this class of example and I set the position to be static, there will not really be any difference. Let's set the border to be 2 pixels solid. So yeah, there's really no change over here. So this is the default value. There we go. Then I'm gonna create another div element, div class example2, and let's go through the relative positioning. Position relative. Let's take the class of example2. Alright, example2, and I'm gonna add a border once again. Then I'm gonna position it, but actually I'm going first. I will add a break tag. BR. Alright. Then the position will be relative. So what this essentially means is that this element will be positioned relatively to its normal position. So let's say we are gonna use the left 100 pixels. Look what happens. This. So now there will be 100 pixels of space on the left side of the element, and the element itself is going off limits once again, and it will give us a horizontal scroll bar. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this line, and I'm probably gonna remove this as well, or at least add more break tags like that. Alright, so the position relative and the position absolute, they go very well hand in hand. So let's create an example. This first will be set to the position relative, and inside of this element, which is right over here, I'm going to be creating another div element. So I'm gonna take this div class. I'm gonna also rename these relative, absolute. There we go. Position absolute. So when we use the position absolute, the element will be positioned relatively to its nearest positioned ancestor, which is going to be this div element right over here. It's using the position relative. So relative and absolute. Alright. Then I'm gonna remove this line and I'm gonna add a width of 200 pixels, 250 pixels, let's say, and a height of 250 pixels. There we go. And the positioning will be relative. There we go. Then let's take the absolute and set the absolute value to this. So now we can see that this element is inside of this another element, because of course this div element is inside of this div element. So with the position absolute, we can say, for example, top 80 pixels. Now it's gonna be 80 pixels from the top. We can say left 40 pixels. It's gonna be 40 pixels from the left. How about if we say right 40 pixels? Well, in that case, it's gonna make the element more wide. Let's set the height. Height 100 pixels. There we go. And yep. So basically, this element will stay inside of the relatively positioned element with the absolute value. So the element that uses the position absolute will be positioned relatively to the nearest positioned ancestor, which in this case is this div element right over here. This one. So yeah, that's how the relative and the relative and absolute positioning works. Now the position relative can also use the top, left, right and bottom values like these. So let's say that the top is gonna be 100 pixels. Let's set the left to be 100 pixels. So now you can see that the relatively positioned element has moved 100 pixels from the left to the right. And the element inside, which is positioned absolute, that's going to move with the element, as you can see. So they are moving together. So yeah, this is very useful when you are styling complex layouts for complex websites. Alright. Keep in mind that we can also use negative values, like let's say minus 30 pixels, minus 40 pixels, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. So yeah, it will slowly get off the screen. This time it will not add a horizontal scroll bar. So yeah, we can also use negative values on these. Let's try to put this to the center. So let's use left 100 pixels, 110. I guess that's pretty much in the center. And let's put the absolutely positioned element to the center as well. So the top is gonna be something like 70 pixels and the left will be 60 pixels, 65. Alright, I'm gonna give this a background color let's say orange, and this one will have a background color of pink. Alright, so yeah, now we have a absolutely positioned element inside of a relatively positioned element, and we have used the left, top, left, and the height properties to adjust the size and positioning of these elements. Okay, let's go to the next one. All of this might be a little confusing at the start, but the more you work with these, the more better you will get at these. So yeah. Alright, let's get to the position sticky. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove these. And I'm gonna remove these. Okay, what are we going to need? We're going to need a div element with the class. Actually, we already have one. What am I doing? Alright, here we go. This is position fixed. So when the position is set to fixed, it will always stay on the viewport, even though if you scroll down. I'm gonna create some sample text, paragraph, type in lorem and tab if you are using Visual Studio Code. Then I'm gonna create another paragraph. And a third one. There we go. Let's say a fourth one as well. There we go. So now we have a lot of stuff over here. I'm gonna go and take the example, if that was the right one. Yep, that is. And I'm going to give this a background color of light blue. Alright, the height will be 200 pixels, or let's say 100, and the same for the width. So, let's set the position to be sticky. Oh yeah, and by the way, not fixed, but sticky. So, when the position is sticky, when we scroll past this element, no. Alright, sorry. The value is fixed. So here we go. So, we have set the height and width of this property, and it will always stay in the viewport, even when we scroll. This box is always visible. This is very useful when you are creating navigation bars or something else that you want to show up on the screen all the time, whether or not the user scrolls. So that's the fixed positioning of an element. Okay, then let's try the top, left, right and bottom values. If I set the top value to be 0 or 0 pixels, this will be at the top and it will stay there. I can set the left to be 10 pixels, or let's say 50 pixels. Right, 50 pixels. It's not gonna do anything in this case, but if the left was 0 and the right was 50 pixels, wait a moment, like that. So if the top and right are 0, then it will be positioned in the top right corner. If the top and left are 0, it will be positioned in the top left corner. Let's say bottom and left 0. We gotta put the right value to be 0 pixels and remove the top value. So now it's gonna be positioned in the bottom or the bottom right corner. So it's gonna be 0 pixels from the right and 0 pixels from the bottom. If I set this to be 50 pixels, it will be 50 pixels from the bottom. If I set this to be the right property to be, or in this case, left or right, but if I set it to be 50 pixels, it's gonna be 50 pixels from the right side. So yeah, that's how the positioning of that, that's how the positioning of a fixed element works. Okay, next up I am going to set the values of this one to be left 0 pixels and let's say top 0 pixels. So it is going to be right over here. And let's set the positioning to be sticky. With the sticky positioning, it's going to be right where it belongs to. So we have the div element right after our h3 heading, this one. So first it's going to be right over there. Then when we scroll past this element, that's going to be sticky. Look at this. It's going to stick to our top of the viewport. So yeah, that's what the position sticky means. So yeah, this browser will like catch it, and then it will stay with us until the content ends. Alright. Then, if I go ahead and set the top property, for example, to be 50 pixels, when we scroll past this one, and I set the top to be 50 pixels, this element is gonna go down by 50 pixels from the top of the viewport. Let's say left will be 50 pixels. Now it's gonna go to the right. So from the left to the right, from the top to the bottom, etc. Let's set this to be 150. It's gonna be right over there. So yeah. Then one more example. Let's create a div element with the class of example. Let's set this one to be relative. Then inside of the relatively positioned div element, we will create example2 will be the class, and this will be absolute. Alright, then I'm gonna take the example. Let's say the width will be 150 pixels, height 150 pixels, background color will be, let's say, aqua. Alright, and the positioning will be relative, and let's say it's gonna be left 50 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top. So yeah, it's gonna look like that. So we can adjust this as well. We already went through this. Okay, then I'm gonna take the example 2. This time the width will be half of the parent container. So here we have a width and height of 150. We are going to take the half of that. So 75 pixels. Height will be 75 pixels. The background color will be pink. The position will be absolute, and let's set this to be 75 pixels from 45, let's say, or 40 pixels from the top until 40 pixels from the left. So now it's pretty much center aligned inside of the container with the relative positioning. Okay, if I go ahead and change the position of the parent container, which is this one or this one right over here, If I set it to be fixed, look what happens. This is gonna stay with our viewport all the time. Kind of annoying, but we have that. What about... So what about sticky? Let's set this to be sticky. And when we scroll past this element, it will stick to the viewport like this, in a similar way that its position is styled. We can adjust these to be, for example, 100 pixels and 100 pixels. And yeah. Alright, so those are the values for the position properties: static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. They might be feeling a little bit difficult right now, but when we use them more and more, you will get more used to them. So yeah, I hope we were able to learn something new from this episode, and I hope that I'm going to see you in the next one as well. So yeah, bye bye everyone, and have a wonderful day and happy learning. Bye bye.